I think it's time for a shop tour. I've gotten a lot of people requesting that I do one, and it's been 4 years or so since I did the last one. So I think I'll start with a description of the circulation, and then I'll talk about the different zones of the shop and what's in the different zones, and that'll pretty much fill out this video. There's a circulation pattern in the shop that I didn't really think about beforehand. It just kind of happened as I used the shop, in that there's a main circulation corridor off the door that runs from the front of the back of the shop, and then off of that are little fingers or little corridors that then run into the shop. So there's this circulation pattern, and then there's a corridor that goes by the radial arm saw and the table saw. There's a corridor by the smaller table saw and the back of the planer. Then there's another one next to all the small shaping tools. And then there's one at the back wall next to the CNC machine. So it's sort of like an E, like you have a spine with then fingers coming off that pattern. And that seems to work pretty well because I can get in to the shop quickly through the main corridor, and then from there take a finer path into the part of the shop that I need to go to. This part of the shop just stays clear for the most part, except for the work table and the filter cart that always seem to be in the way. So this end of the shop is by the door, and I come in and the wood comes in through that door. So the idea is that this zone is wood storage and wood prep, sort of getting the wood ready to be used for whatever project it's going to be used for. So I've got the big radial arm saws over here for cutting things to length, and the big table saw for ripping is here, and then the joiner and the planer are on each side of this. So it's sort of, this zone kind of gets the wood ready to be used. And I moved the wood storage that used to be against the other wall, the far wall behind the camera, to over here. So it's now a part of this space, and the wood doesn't have to travel very far from when it comes in through the door. It then can just stay over in this corner. Now I made this, and it seemed really big when I made it, and it's painfully too small. And I have the wood storage racks on the wall, and I'm wondering if there's a better way to do this to get more use out of this wall. I mean, I did it because it kind of looked pretty here, but it needs to function better. Okay, so this is the main central area of the shop. And if the front or the place by the door is for getting wood ready, this is sort of the area for shaping wood. So all the machines in here, drill holes or cut more specific shapes, or sand, or cut pieces down to smaller sizes. So it's sort of getting ready to put things together. So this is really the woodworking shop, so to speak. So it's ringed by the smaller table saw. And then I've got another table saw that I want to set up better. It's still sitting here on the corner of the other two. And then the back side of the planer is the other corner of this space. And then the wall that the cameras are sitting on are the smaller radial arm saws. Along this side are lots of shaping things. There's a drill press and the scroll saw and the smaller band saw and some sanders and the mortising machine. And that's kind of the row of littler machines. And then the wall by the windows are more drill presses, the big disc sander, and then the corner of that is sort of the joiner. So the wood prep and storage kind of overlaps with the woodworking area in the middle. So this is the lathe area of the shop, and it's sort of the back corner of the shop from the door. So the far zone of the space beyond the woodworking area is sort of two specialty areas, and one of them is the lathe area, and then one of them is the CNC area. And these are sort of bigger areas that are still woodworking but don't fit sort of within the woodworking area. And they're specialized enough that they can sort of be separated. Now the CNC machine is going to grow a little bit, so I had to move the lathe and kind of scrunch the lathe area a little bit. So I haven't actually turned with it where it is at the moment. It's basically about 2 feet this way. And I moved this cabinet, used to be against this back wall under the window, and I sort of rotated that over here, and that gave me the room to move the lathe. And I think the lathe is a little bit low for me, so I put the lathe up on some concrete pavers. So I'm hoping this is going to work and make the lathe just a little bit higher. Now I haven't actually turned with it where it is. I got it all moved, and then I realized my plug no longer reaches where it needs to get plugged in by about 2 inches. And I moved the bandsaw that used to be over here, got moved over into the woodworking area. Although I do use it with the lathe a lot, but it's really not all that far away. But it gave me some more room back here, and it always felt a little cramped. All the tools got moved over next to the door here, which I'm hoping is going to be okay. I think it's right across from where the lathe is. And then the sharpening is right here as well. And we redid a bathroom recently, and we have a bunch of the cork flooring left over. So I'd like to make a little cork pad to stand on under the lathe. That's what these pieces of wood are that are down here. So if you stand in the lathe area and look past the lathe, the CNC is in the other corner of this back zone of specialty things. And it's taking up more and more space over here. I've just added another 4 feet to the table, and that will let me have my vertical clamping table that I'd like to have. The table will come across here, and then it'll go vertical at this point, and there'll be a hinge here so the table can swing up and down and be held at different angles. So I can clamp objects at funny angles, like a bowl. And I can clamp things vertically to do joints and to do the ends of pieces of wood. I'd like to redo this area back here, which needs to be organized. I was thinking I'd build a bunch of cabinets or drawers for nuts and bolts and get all that organized, but it's kind of far away from the woodworking area, so I'm kind of wondering if that's really such a good idea. That this really needs to be kind of storage that I don't use as much in the shop. But what I really do need back here is a place to keep all the CNC related stuff. And it'd be nice to have a space for all that. Like all the router bits and all the tools for changing router bits and all the measuring tools that are needed. So as far as what's new, when compared to 4 years ago, when I did the last shop tour video, the big thing is I've moved the wood storage from the far wall over to the corner closer to the door. And that's been a big help with workflow and keeping the idea that the first zone in the shop is sort of the wood prep and wood storage section. The second big thing is the CNC moved into the shop, and the metalworking tools that used to be in that corner have moved into the basement of our house. And I'd like to set up a small metalworking shop in that room in the house. And once that gets set up, I'll show that. Right now it's just a pile of tools. One other big thing is the center space that used to be open is now full of a big drum sander and a big table saw. And I've sort of lost my central space, but I have 2 machines that I need to work on and set up. But besides those changes, the layout is pretty much the same as it's been. So I think I'll stop this video here, but I'd like to do more of these, maybe a part 2 or 3 or 4, and go into more details on other aspects of the shop. Thanks for watching.